Welcome to the Equity Teacher Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rachael Mahmood. In this podcast, we'll dive into the stories, the voices, and the expertise of incredible teacher leaders who are making a difference through the equity work they do in their classrooms and their communities. Welcome to another episode of Equity Teacher Leader. Today, we have a very unique topic, something we haven't talked about before. So I'm super excited to jump into the conversation. I want to introduce you to Luisa Sparrow. She is the 2025 Massachusetts Teacher of the Year. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here with you. It's always great to chat with any of my story friends, and I'm really excited to talk with you tonight.
Yes, it's awesome. You're the second story that I'm interviewing, so I'm very excited. For those of you that missed the last episode, STOY stands for State Teacher of the Year. So Luisa is representing Massachusetts to the end of 2025. Why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Sure. So I teach in Boston Public Schools, specifically in the South Boston neighborhood at the Perry School. And this is my 21st year in education. I think 17th year in the classroom. And I teach a multi-grade classroom. It's a 5th and 6th grade classroom for all subjects for students with moderate to significant intellectual disabilities.
Yeah. And one of the cool things that we do for the State Teachers of the Year program is we get an opportunity to share lightning lessons. And these are just like short lessons about some of our best practices, our project that we do with our students that we're super proud of. And because you and I teach, close to the same grade level, we were partnered in a group, and I got a chance to see your lightning lesson, and seeing you doing that lightning lesson, explaining what you do with your students, and just the amount of time we spent together advocating for students in the State Teacher of the Year program. I was like, you have to be on this podcast because I know you're an equity teacher leader. And so I'm super excited to jump into that conversation. But when I was perusing your bio, I noticed a couple other things that we have in common. Teach Plus, you're a Teach Plus fellow, senior fellow. So you did it twice, right?
Yeah, I actually did it for 3 years.
Wow.
So I think it was 4 years ago, I was a policy fellow. And then the last 2 years, I was a senior policy fellow. And it was really awesome experience to do for 3 years running. If anybody has Teach Plus near them, I highly recommend the program.
Absolutely. I agree too. I learned so much doing Teach Plus, and I've interviewed a ton of people that have been part of Teach Plus because either you're an advocate, so you get into Teach Plus, or you're into Teach Plus and then your advocacy skills just like blow up. So just a great way to hone your teacher leadership skills and really work on that social justice and advocacy as well. And then I also saw that you don't have the typical coming into education story. I think I saw in your bio, Teach for America.
Yes, that's
Tell
right.
us a little bit about how you ended up in teaching through the Teach for America program.
Sure. So I was always interested in being a teacher, and I was in a more traditional prep
Mhm.
program in college and undergrad. And it was very small and was actually sort of run through like a sister college to the university I attended. And it closed in the middle of my junior year. And yeah, so I decided to look around for other avenues to becoming a teacher and obtaining my licensure, and found out about Teach for America that way. And I also was really interested in the mission. I liked the idea of going someplace I might never end up otherwise.
And you also got to teach in Costa Rica.
So my maternal grandmother lived in Costa Rica for a long time, and I was just interested in learning more about the country because of that. And so I went to an international teaching fair in Iowa in January of my 5th year teaching in Texas, and met a principal there and just got a job teaching in Costa Rica and moved there a few months
So
later.
amazing. So you have like this national perspective of teaching in multiple states, and then you have this global perspective of having the opportunity to teach in different countries. For a little while, I was teaching in India, And it was just only for like a summer, but even that was like so eye-opening. I taught kindergarten in India. There was a school that was looking to like move to more center-based kindergarten education. And so I came there and I set up their centers and I helped train the teachers on center-based learning. And it's just so amazing when we think about what our norms for school are and how we don't always realize just how Euro-centered or American even centered those norms are. We're just like, oh, yeah, it's the right way to teach. But then we're like, oh, wait, no, that's how they prepare teachers in America for American classrooms. You go outside of that, and education can look so different.
Absolutely.
All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit. Of course, the main thing I wanted to talk about is, working with students with intellectual disabilities. So I think it would be great just to start off like defining what do you mean when you say moderate to significant intellectual disabilities? Can you define that for us so we can visualize which students you're working with?
Sure. An intellectual disability is one that affects a person's ability to learn academic skills,
Hmm.
and it also affects their ability to acquire daily living skills, such as, hygiene, maybe feeding, toileting, things like that, navigating the community. So it really has sort of global effects on a person's functioning. And just like with any disability, there is a range or a spectrum, as we often call it. And so there are four main categories of intellectual disability. There's mild, moderate, severe, and profound. And those categories just really kind of describe how much support a person would need in their everyday life to sort of like carry on with their daily living activities. I tend to use the term significant versus severe just because severe, I think, has a bit of a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
So, and I think significant sort of still encapsulates the idea that that person does need quite a lot of support with activities of daily living. And so, some of the disabilities of students in my class are Down syndrome co-occurring with autism, meaning that, several students have both Down syndrome and autism and more significant autism. And then also there are some students who have intellectual disability, not with like a specific syndrome attached to it or anything, but just have an intellectual disability. And just as students in any other class, I have a wide range of strengths and support needs among my students.
Thanks for clarifying that. Because I just want people to understand, and myself, I want to understand who are we talking about? Who are these students in your classroom as we get into how you're supporting them and what you're doing to help those students to have equitable outcomes. And one of the reasons I was really drawn to your story or what the work you're doing in your classroom is because of, was it that t-shirt that you had? What was the t-shirt you were wearing? There was a t-shirt with something all,
Oh,
was
all
it?
brains are beautiful.
All brains are beautiful. And I was thinking about like that was an equity t-shirt. And I think about oftentimes when we say to people like, oh, this is an equity teacher leader podcast, or we're doing equity work, or this school has an equity director, people assume we're talking about a race, right? Our racial issue, racism, racial inequality. Maybe they think of some cultural inequality. Maybe they think of a few language barriers or maybe lack of accommodations for different religions. But I don't feel that generally people think, oh, yeah, that also includes people that are neurodivergent, people that have different levels of intellectual abilities, people that have different levels of physical abilities and needs as well. And so I was drawn to that because I'm like, yes, you are an equity leader because you are helping students who are facing a disadvantage at school, in the classrooms, in their lives, in society in general, and you're helping them through education, through your teaching, through your belief in them to have these equitable outcomes so they can live a life that's, similar as can be to the rest of the population, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a really good point, that you bring up. I think that you're totally correct. We don't often, think of segregation along lines of ability as a problem, but it is. And actually, it's interesting because in many districts throughout the country, there is also a racial equity issue tied up in this because we see so frequently that in these segregated or sub-separate classrooms, students of color and in particular Black boys are much more likely to be placed in these self-contained or substantially separate settings, even when their disability diagnosis or disability classification is the same as that of other students.
And I've definitely seen that higher representation of students, specifically Black students, not even just Black boys, but Black girls as well. Yeah. So it's interesting the intersectionality of that oppression, how, having the intellectual differences in their abilities. And then on top of it, having race be a compounding factor. And then
Mhm.
socioeconomic status, I'm sure a triple, double compounding factor as well, and how that all pans out. Okay, so you're working with students, you're mostly working in a self-contained environment. Is your school district an inclusion school district?
We are working on moving towards that, yes. And we do lots of inclusion opportunities for for my class, we do a lot. That's one of the things that I'm most excited about that we've done over the past 9 years since I've been at my current school. But there's a lot of room for improvement for sure.
Yeah. I'm a full supporter of inclusion model. I know it's super tough, right? When you don't have all the supports in place, when you don't have the staffing in place, when teachers don't have adequate training, when students aren't fully prepared and we just plop kids in and then students don't know how to react that are in the classroom to some of the differences in learning behaviors or appearance or anything. I think those are some things that inhibit the program from being successful. But generally, I also fully believe that when kids are around kids, they learn better. They learn
Yes.
better when they're around kids who are also learning. They have great peer models. They're all peer modeling for each other. And since
Yeah.
all of us are on some kind of spectrum, on multiple different types of spectrums, right? We're already dealing with a wide variety of needs in the classrooms. Kids are more likely to forge friendships, to develop empathy for people who are different than them. I feel like the benefits outweigh, but I think it's tough because school districts often jump to that inclusion model without all the supports in place.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, you make a good point that it benefits everyone, and everyone who lives long enough will become disabled at some point. And so it really behooves all of us. If only from a selfish standpoint, it benefits all of us to, create a more accessible society for sure.
And empathetic.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I would love for you to share some of your lessons that you do, some of the work that you've done, especially the lightning lesson that I got an opportunity to see. Give us a little synopsis of that and any other really cool projects that you've been doing in your classroom so we can just kind of see all the magic that the Massachusetts Teacher of the Year brings to the classroom every day. We want to feel your magic, feel your passion. What do you got for us?
Okay, so I have a few things. I'll do a little show and tell here. So, one of the things is, we try to model our curriculum as closely to what the general education class is doing as
Mhm.
possible so that we are having exposure to the same concepts and ideas. And then we can also team up to have lots of lessons together. And so, we're really on the same page about the same topics and themes. So one of our big units is fighting for change. And so, a way that I support all of my students in having discussions, because, discussion is one of the most powerful ways of learning in the classroom because it enables students to learn from each other, not just from the teacher. And I think that's so important. But not all students access discussions in the same ways.
Mhm.
Some students communicate with AAC devices, some communicate with gestures, some communicate with pointing, all different kinds of ways. So I created some tools to support classroom discourse among my students who communicate in all different ways. So for our Fighting for Change unit, we have sort of a key concepts board, and these concepts come up multiple ones of these concepts: fair, unfair, activist, speak up, brave, change, teamwork, happy, sad. At least like three of these, if not more, even more will come up in every text that we read in this unit. And then when we have this out and every person in the room has a laminated copy of this during every discussion so
Mhm.
that it's available to point to, like we just read this page about a student who is being left out because of the language he spoke. How does that make you feel? What are you seeing happening there? And anybody in the class can point to unfair. Anybody can point to like, sorry, we need like that should change. It's not okay.
Mhm.
So even if they're not talking like you and I are talking, everybody can point here. I will say all of my students are able to point to communicate. And so that
Mhm.
is a prerequisite skill for using this. And I do recognize that not all students everywhere can point, but
Mhm.
I'm just kind of knowing like the skill level of my students. Then breaking it down even further for each individual text within the Fighting for Change unit, we have some different ways of responding to comprehension questions. So and we have this amazing book, Emmanuel's
Oh my
Dream.
gosh, I have that book in my classroom too.
So good, isn't it?
It's so good.
Love it. So throughout the book, we have the discussion and comprehension questions taped in with these little Velcro dots. And students can either answer verbally, they can answer with gestures, they can pick a piece from here, the answer
Mhm.
piece mat that represents their response, and actually like Velcro it
Wow.
into the book.
Yes.
Then we also have these pictures, one for each question, like taped up on the board at the front of the room. I should say at the front of the carpet. We have all our reading discussions close
Mhm.
together on the carpet, and they can come up to the front of the group and like pick the picture off of the board and show it to their classmates. So as you can see, like we use a lot of pictures. They are more accessible for my students, but then also, the pictures paired with the words gives like multiple ways for my students to engage with the text. They have different ways of responding to the text, like whether selecting a picture, pointing to the key concept mat. So I just want to give them as many options as possible, basically. And then building on the visual supports idea, we have a picture of a manual. I want them to understand, like, even though this book has drawings, it is a nonfiction
Mhm.
text, and this is a real person. And then, like
Vocabulary
vocabulary
words.
words
Yeah.
with pictures and student friendly definitions on them. So I would say, like you can never have too many pictures.
Yes. I think all that like whole body learning, right? Like we have the visual, we have the verbal, you have the kinesthetic, the ripping, the touching, the pointing. I mean, all of it together is definitely going to increase your comprehension all around
Yeah.
and move information from your short term to long term memory.
Yes. And with the pointing, pointing is I think it can be like so overlooked, but
Mhm.
like if you look at the development of communication skills, pointing is really one of the earliest things that people do as they're developing language. It's really like connecting with another person and like, look at what we have here. Like, look at this thing that I'm noticing. Do you see it too? And so I think pointing is really important. So I mean, honestly, those things that we do for every reading lesson are huge for our class. Another project I'm really excited about is our classic reading card project, which we do every year. My students design greeting cards, they paint them. I'll just show some of the beautiful
Mhm.
designs. I love seeing what they come up with every year. And so they sell these cards and they get to use the money that they earn from the greeting card sale to buy whatever they want. I love also seeing all the different things that they buy with their money. They get to name them. So this one's Pink Hurricane. I mean, I think that really does look like the
Mhm.
eye of a
It
hurricane.
does.
Sonic, okay? Makeup SpongeBob. So anyway, I just love seeing their designs. And I think This came about during the pandemic as a way to just spread some joy to others. Like a lot of people were writing letters at that time. We sold these cards during the pandemic so that people could keep in touch with other people. It also, every year, we have at least 3 businesses going on for my students to earn money. I think it's really important for students, especially my students who have intellectual disabilities, to be able to earn money and have the autonomy to spend it on whatever they want to spend it on. Because in the United States, 80% of American adults with intellectual disabilities are unemployed and they don't really have
Yeah.
the opportunity to earn money and spend it how they want as a result. And so I really want my students to have that experience starting young.
It's
So,
motivating, right? Because 'Cause
yeah.
they're like, "This is fun, and look at what I get, and I'm gonna want to get those rewards in the future, so I'm gonna continue to try to, be able to have that autonomy and make those choices and get those rewards."
Yeah. I mean, I still remember what I spent my first paycheck on. It was not a check, it was like cash, but I bought a
Mine was
boom
probably
box.
rent. "You
Oh,
bought a
yeah.
boombox." I'm like, "I've already."
Yeah. I was in middle school, so,
Oh, okay.
I wasn't
Got
paying
you.
rent yet.
I was thinking about my first
Um,
teaching paycheck versus my first, like, high school job, but yeah. But no, I mean, I think that's great too, and then that's also teaching them the life skills, right? Because they have to deal with the money and they have to sell it, and they probably, are getting a lot of the life skills of, like, the spending and collecting and making a product, and just such a great lesson all around for all students, but definitely for your students because of the inequity that they continue to face as they get older.
yeah.
I love that. And one of the things I loved about the book, as I was watching you show all the visuals and all the things that you've put into the book, and if you're listening as a listener to this as a podcast, you definitely need to move over to YouTube and watch the vodcast because Louisa showed all of the materials as she was explaining them, and you can really see how she set it up. One of the things I love is that never for a minute did you doubt that they couldn't hit those higher level thinking skills. You were not saying, like, we're just going to focus on sounding out these words. You were saying, understand the themes of these stories, understand the deeper meaning behind them, understand the implications they have as a citizen, that what you can take away when you become a citizen or an adult citizen, what you can take away now as a citizen. Um, it's like the high expectations, the asset-based thinking of your students. I mean, all of those things are things that equity teacher leaders do. They see their students in positive light. They see all the assets they bring to the classroom. They have super high expectations for them, and they're not going to change those expectations or limit them based on stereotypes or, other negative information coming in. But
Yeah.
that's really inspiring. I don't know if you've ever read the book Out of My Mind. Have you read that book?
I haven't read it, but it's on my TBR for sure.
Okay, for those of you that are listening and who haven't heard of it, I forgot the name of the author, but Out of My Mind is about a girl who has cerebral palsy and she's unable to communicate other than through grunts and pointing and making noises. And she has a very limited speech board on like her tray of her wheelchair. And so with a limited amount of words, they're mostly due to like daily habits of like brush teeth or eat food or water. There's no words on there for, like, deeper thinking, and she goes every day to her self-contained class, and the teacher is spending every day on, like, the ABCs, and, like, the expectations are just super low, but she likes to go in the corner and listen to her audiobooks, and her audiobooks are all, like I think they're, like, Beverly Cleary or things like that, and they were more about, like, middle school girls and coming of age stories, and she was also, I think, in 6th grade, and she has all these deep, rich, emotional feelings, thoughts. She's super smart. She has this photographic memory, but she has no way of showing the world that because of her lack of communication, and she's frustrated, and so her colleagues, classmates, and the other teachers, they constantly see her outbursts through that frustration, but they don't see the reason for the outburst or the frustration is that her lack of communication for the complex things she's thinking. And
Yeah.
so it's all about her learning a way to communicate, to share her story. I don't want to spoil the book. If you're not a reader, Disney Plus did make a movie. Of course, the book is better, but if you need
Always.
a quick fix, you can Disney Plus the movie. I actually think we bought Disney Plus because I read the book with my daughter, and then we actually bought Disney Plus just to watch the movie and then canceled it like the next month. So it's the only place that was available. But again, it was like that idea of like, you don't know what's behind that communication. Like you could have a student that's just filled with all these ideas and all these stories and all these complex thoughts and vocabulary and all these abilities. And the lack of being able to communicate that is the hindrance that's then putting the low expectation on them, is putting the bias on them and all of those other things. And so I thought it was an inspirational story. Side note.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard such good things about it.
It was very good. All right. So I'm thinking about, even in my classroom, since I'm in a full inclusion classroom, I have students with autism that are in my classroom for a good portion of the day. I have students that were previously in classrooms that were self-contained for, being more moderate intellectual disabilities, but we don't have placement for them. So they're in the gen ed setting with us. I have students who've had Down syndrome over the years. Varying levels of autism. Even being a general education teacher in a fully included classroom, I have students with varying levels of intellectual abilities, and I'm always looking for tips on how to engage them, how to not just engage them and make sure they're part of the classroom, but also how to tap into the deeper learning and thinking, more multimodal thinking. Because I want them to access the curriculum at the same level as my other students are able to access, or at least at the highest level that they can. What are some strategies that you can offer to a general education teacher that has students that are included with varying levels of intellectual abilities to help ensure that we are being equitable and serving their needs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have one tip, I guess that's sort of a mindset tip, and
Hmm.
then three like actual things to do tips, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
So the mindset, I think, is something that we've already talked about earlier. It's this idea of presuming competence, which is really embracing the understanding that all students are capable of learning, thinking, connecting, and understanding. They might do it differently than others, but everybody does those things differently. Some of us do them in more similar ways, and some of us do them in less similar ways, but really like leaning into that idea and the idea that, the student is never the barrier to participation and learning. So I think, definitely going on to the Universal Design for Learning website is so helpful. There's a chart on there with the guidelines and different strategies to use. And if you click on each like box on the chart, it will give concrete strategies for different ways to support students with different learning needs. So the three like main buckets are multiple means of representation, multiple means of expression and action, and then the third one is multiple means of engagement. So it's really just like making the learning environment as flexible as possible and removing as many barriers to learning as possible. And so because there are like 1,000 plus ways you could do that, I would definitely recommend going to the UDL website, going to that page, and I'll send a link so that it can be like included in the show
Perfect. Yeah, I was
notes.
gonna say I'm gonna need that link specifically, and yeah, we'll definitely
Yes.
put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I consult that all the time. I have like a color printout in my planner that I
Love
carry around
it.
with me everywhere so that I can look at it all the time. And yeah, there's just like so many practical recommendations in there. And I think they even have some videos and like direct from classroom examples now. And I would highly recommend connecting with the SLP or speech language pathologist at your school to develop a toolkit for communication strategies that students can use in your class. Like,
That's such
for
a good
example,
idea.
this type of thing.
Yes.
Like SLPs specialize in communication. And I really think communication is connection. And when people can communicate, they can connect, and nobody will feel comfortable taking academic risks and really putting themselves out there if they don't feel that sense of connection and belonging in the classroom. You know, it allows academic progress and it allows relationships to flourish. And then I think, like, in addition to working with the SLP to come up with a communication toolkit, when you're going through units, narrow in or zoom in on the most critical understandings from the unit. You know, that you could do it by like PUBD,
Mhm.
understanding by design approach, and then for each individual lesson, like, what is the bottom line understanding? I think a lot of times we talk about sort of like exemplar student responses, and those are wonderful. We definitely want to have like, what is like the pie in the sky ideal answer a
The
student will
top of the
write.
curve, top of the curve.
Yes.
Also
But
need to know what is the bottom. Somebody once told me this visual. They're like, imagine like a bullseye chart. The thing in the middle is what we want to make sure every single kid, no matter who they are, no matter what level they're at, no matter what their services are, their needs are, every kid must walk away with the thing in the middle,
yes.
the non-negotiable for your lesson. And then
Yeah.
like the next circle out from that, it would be great if a majority of kids walked away with this. Then the next
Yeah.
circle from that, it would be great if like, 25 or 50%. And then like as you like spanned out and then you're like those
Yes.
outer rings, like maybe, still we need to have a few kids that can walk with something even more that's
Yeah.
going to push their learning. And
Yeah. Like an
so
extension activity or something
exactly,
like
but
that.
the reason I love that visual is because I love the fact that there was a non-negotiable. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care what your abilities, disabilities, needs, whatever, but every person can do this thing and is going to walk away from my class being able to do this one thing.
Yeah. And they might be writing 3 sentences about it or writing a paragraph about it, or they might be pointing to it on a chart, and that is great. That's
'Cause
fine.
it's not
Like,
what they're doing so much as how what is the learning they're showing they can do, right? Or they
yeah.
can understand.
Yes, and it's okay for students to be doing different things in the classroom.
Yes.
I think, like, when I started teaching, my understanding of inclusion was skewed. I thought that it meant everybody was doing the same thing together. It's great and even desirable for kids to be doing different things. You know, if we didn't have people doing things differently, we would never have progress in society. Yeah. So I think it is wonderful to celebrate the different ways we all communicate. And it's definitely a balance between, like, you wanna hold high expectations for everyone, or actually, maybe even, like, a reframing of that is, like, high supports for everyone. Because I think high expectations maybe puts too much on students, and I don't know.
I guess when I think of high expectations, I'm not thinking everyone must be able to do this one thing, but I think of it as everyone has the ability to learn, to do complex, deep things. It's more of like the
Yes.
mindset of
Yeah.
having high expectations and that whatever those actual expectations are don't have to be the same for everybody. Because a
Yeah.
high expectation for a kid who's in the gifted program is going to look different than a student who has an IEP in the same area where the other student's gifted. Having high expectations for the kid who has an IEP, it's still them pushing beyond their zone of proximal development. And
Yeah.
that target can look different for every kid.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
I always tell
Yeah.
my students, if you don't lift heavy weights, you're not going to build muscles, and so, but everybody's muscles are at different sizes. What feels heavy to us is going to feel different for each one of us, but each one of us should feel like we're lifting something heavy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I bring in some weights usually and do like a little like demo because my kids want to lift light weights all year long. They want everything to be easy. And I always try to explain everything is hard before it's easy. It's supposed to be, that's
Yeah.
that's called progress. That's called
Yeah.
learning.
So true.
And all right, I want to wrap up the podcast with a question. This is my season 2 question that I'm asking all my season 2 guests. It is a dream of mine to like open a school or to disrupt education in like a huge way. Just to we need to change the way we're doing school. I mean, it needs a massive makeover. And who doesn't love a great makeover story? But if you could redesign a school from the ground up, with this idea of serving every student of every level of intellectual ability, or you could rewrite one rule or norm in education to just make it more equitable for your students that you service, what would that school look like?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I think I would have a lot more multi-grade classrooms out there.
Mm.
I know when I first got into a multi-grade classroom, I actually taught 3 grades at once in the same classroom at that time when I first changed to this setting. And it took a while for me to wrap my head around it. And I was thinking, so I'm going to be teaching like 3 whole sets of curriculum, different ones at different times. I just logistically, I was having a tough time envisioning what that meant. But what it has meant, I'm having maybe like a 3rd grader with a 5th grader who are needing to work on similar skills and concepts. Like we're working for a little while here. And I have like my 4th grade group over there because they happen to be working on some things together. I think the real gift of a multi-grade classroom is because there are so many ages there, you have a
Mhm.
lot more like mentors and opportunities to provide leadership amongst the students.
Yes, yes.
I guess we're using amongst now, but also because there's kids of all different ages, you as the teacher just develop more comfort with the idea of students progressing at different paces and some students might be progressing faster in this area and need more support in this other area.
Like, you
And
can almost differentiate more when we let go of this idea that just because you're the same age, you should be in a room together. Because that's very, like, I feel like industrial revolution, right? Like,
yeah,
we're going to group people by birth, and then we're going to just have like these mass marketed lessons to these groups. No, I think that's great. And I'm super into like project-based learning. So I always think if you teach it in a project, it naturally differentiates itself
yes.
because I tell my kids, like for example, we're learning the regions of the United States, and my test is pick your test to show your best, is what's the name of my
Mhm.
test. And so they can design a poster, they can do a drawing, they can make a Google slideshow, they can write a paper, they can make a video, they can, what are some of the other options I had? They can do like a book. Like, so whatever their options are that they pick, they design the whole thing. And like within whatever they're doing, I just need like 3 geography facts, 3 manufacturing facts, three
Wow.
whatever. So it naturally differentiates itself so that kids who have different levels of abilities, like if writing's not their strong point, it's okay because show me what you know. And like I could see wrapping now in like if I had a student with an intellectual disability, I could say like point to 3 geography things, point to 3, whatever, history facts, manufacturing facts. Like I could say, I could have a cards all laid out and I could say like grab groups and you create your
Yeah.
own collage, right? I could have the pictures pre-printed. Like every person can show what they know in a way that they feel passionate about showing it, in a way that they're comfortable, in a way that they're able. It's like naturally differentiated. And so I love
Yeah.
this idea of multi-level classrooms because if you were doing projects and it was all project based, each kid can just take it to the level that they're going to take it to. Like there's also no cap. So like the kids that are
Yeah.
like, I'm done. I'm like, guess what? It's a project. So you can't be done early. You just keep working on it. You just keep making it better.
Yeah.
They're always like, "Huh?"
Absolutely.
And I'm like, "Well, the time hasn't run out. It's a project. There's no cap. There's no
Yeah.
being done." So it's like that's something that's really hard for kids to realize that like there's not like an end, right? Like it's not the worksheet is complete.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I love that idea. It's almost kind of like you're like a return to the one house, the
Yeah.
one room schoolhouse. Yeah.
Yes,
But
absolutely. And it's interesting because when we were talking about UDL or Universal Design for
yeah,
Learning
yeah.
earlier, you were like, oh, I'm going to need those links. But what you just described to me is very UDL. Yeah, you're already doing a lot of
I
it.
know, I know. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for this conversation. You really opened my eyes to just how important communication is. I love what you said about like pointing being the first step in communication and how we can use more diverse ways to get students learning out of them and meet them where they're at, because you have such high expectations for your students, because you are constantly looking to ways to innovate your lessons and make them more accessible for your students. Making learning accessible for diverse students is a key hallmark characteristic of being an equity teacher leader. And the fact that you're out here sharing these strategies, there's no doubt in my mind you're an equity teacher leader, and I'm so glad we had a chance to talk today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I earned it. It's my destiny.